Hello, this is Jason J. Rock Houston, and along for the ride, as usual, is my partner in crime, Joe Lawson. And you folks are tonight listening to This Is Metal. And Joe and I have decided, because we got such a great response from our tribute to Eddie Van Halen that just went up on the site, that we've decided we're going to throw together a special bonus episode tonight that's going to get posted in the next couple days from the time we record this show. And tonight's episode is Van Halen themed, and it's going to be specifically talking about the album 5150. Now, a lot of people may be asking, why are you choosing that album to talk about? Well, there's a number of reasons, Joe. Number one, when you and I were initially having our talk about Van Halen, you had mentioned to me that this was the album kind of introduced you to Van Halen, which I thought was kind of interesting, because myself, like a lot of other Van Halen fans, I first became aware of Van Halen, through the original lineup, and plus then I was researching online, and I come to find out 5150, for a lot of people that was their introduction to Van Halen, and also the fact that the album's turning 35 years this year. So I thought this album kind of deserves to be looked at, because it's one of those albums people either love or hate. So let's start off with you, Joe. Again, this is the album introduced you to Van Halen. Do you remember what was the first song you heard off of this?
You know what? I listened to it front to back all the time. And it was new to me, so it was something pure and something genuine. Yeah. And what appealed to me so much about this album was the way that it made me feel.
Good time music, you were telling me.
The melodies and the harmonies and everything was so rich and so full, and it was just a good feeling, a good time. From the beginning of it to the end of it, it puts you in a good mood when you listen to it. You felt like partying. You felt like doing something positive. It was just a real positive album. Yeah. And there was a lot at stake for Van Halen with this record, especially filling the shoes of David Lee Roth at that time was no small task. And a lot of people doubted it and didn't think it could be done. And Sammy stepped in, and this album charted #1 on Billboard 200, surpassing Van Halen 1984, which peaked at #2.
Yeah.
So it did even better with Sammy than it did with David Lee Roth. Also, something kind of funny and interesting to point out, 5150 is a term that the band got from California law enforcement for a term that means mentally disturbed person.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of funny.
And you made the point that this was like really the first Van Halen album ever to go #1, which that's saying something for the fact that, again, not only was it the fact that it's the first #1 album, Van Halen, the record sales have always been pretty good, but you go and change your singer. Like you said at the time, Joe, I mean, it was a major thing. I got to tell you, like a lot of people, myself, when this album came out, I didn't want to like it, if you know what I mean. I mean, I was a hardcore David Lee Roth fan, and when it was announced in '85 that Dave was out, I was like, oh my God, like a lot of people, who the hell are they going to get to replace David Lee Roth? And I'll tell you what's funny now. Like a lot of people, I had heard of Sammy Hagar before through the band Montrose. I'd heard some of the solo hits, but I wasn't really a major Hagar fan at the time. I became a bigger Sammy fan once he joined up with Van Halen, and I didn't even realize till I started reading some of the articles, oh, he's a singer from that Montrose album. Oh, okay, so that's who this guy is. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. And another interesting thing about this being a #1 album, and it's a major lineup change in the singer and everything. I mean, the fact that they have a #1 album, and music videos were really big at the time, but they did not release a single music video off of this album. I'm not sure why that was.
Here's another fun fact. Not only did it go #1, Jason, the album went platinum in a week. One fucking week.
Yeah.
It sold 1 million copies. It was the fastest million-selling record in Warner Brothers history.
Oh, yeah, and like I said, I remember when this album came out not wanting to like it, but once stuff started being played on the radio, and see, it was played more on the radio because, like I said, quite surprisingly, they didn't have a single music video for this, and I don't know why not, because the videos were very big at the time. But with that being said, so most of the stuff, because it was good time music, it was Van Halen, everybody wanted to hear what the new lineup sounded like with the new singer. And so it wasn't even, you can't even say because they got a ton of MTV play at the time. It was more being played on the radio at that time, which is very interesting, you know?
Absolutely. And not only that, I think that they were, and this isn't a dig at Roth or the David Lee Roth era, because I love the Van Halen with David Lee Roth, and I think a lot of people do. But with Sammy, another thing that allowed the band to grow musically and their songwriting was that Sammy is not just a singer; he plays guitar.
Oh yeah.
So live, that meant that Eddie could play keyboards on some songs and parts and do different things. It allowed the band to grow and become more versatile.
Yeah, and I was reading today also that a lot of reviewers, kind of when the album came out, and a lot of them have since admitted that they really didn't listen to the entire album. They kind of had that attitude of not wanting to like the album, and they kind of just panned it but they, without even really giving it a chance. And years later, they say, I wish at the time I would have listened to the entire album, because it really is much better than the review I gave it.
Right. Yeah. A lot of critics were harsh on it, because it wasn't Sammy, or it wasn't David Lee Roth, and it was a change of direction, really. And a lot of times, or most of the time, I would venture to say, when a band has a singer change, it changes the dynamics of it.
Oh yeah.
It changes the band. It has to. It's just the way that it is, and I think that they did a good job. I think that that there's been bands in the past that played it safe and replaced the singer and just found a singer that sounded like the previous guy.
Yeah,
Van Halen didn't do that at all. Sammy's completely different than David Lee Roth. Completely.
Oh yeah, and I think that's part of what made it work. I mean, it was a natural kind of progression in the sense that they didn't go out to the. They didn't have him at the time, but like if they would have gone out to try to find the guy who played in the local Van Halen tribute band, it would have been too much of a carbon copy, So, and they would have been like, no, that's not the real David Lee Roth. He's a wannabe or whatever. And the fact that Sammy, actually, they found Sammy because Eddie happened to have the same mechanic as Sammy. He took his car to be fixed one day, and the mechanic said, "Hey, you still looking for a singer? I know Sammy Hagar," and it was actually through the mutual mechanic that they met, and they arranged for Sam to come down and audition.
Right. It's also kind of
and
neat to point out that Mick Jones from Foreigner produced 5150.
Oh yeah, and another interesting point with that is up until that time, Ted Templeman produced the first 6 Van Halen albums, and the huge statement that Templeman made at the time was that he was sticking with Roth. When Roth made the big announcement he's leaving to go solo, he left him with Roth and produced his solo, his first 2 solo albums, and that was kind of his big statement at the time. And Mick Jones, he's a guitar player from Foreigner, so he's a veteran rock guitarist, god in his own right.
Right, absolutely.
And
and again, for me, it was just the songs stuck with me. They resonated. The sing-along choruses of Dreams and Why Can't This Be Love, Love Walks In, Summer Nights. The whole album was really good, I thought, and that was kind of my introduction to
Van Halen,
to some rock music, and definitely to Van Halen,
Yeah, and the other interesting thing too is I was reading that this is the first Van Halen at the time not to feature an instrumental track by Eddie, and when you compare Dave and Sammy, they're very different types of singer. I even dare say that I love a David Lee Roth stuff, but I dare say that Dave is much more of an entertainer. I mean, he for what he does, he's really great at it. But if you listen to some of his lyrics are really nonsensical. They don't really mean anything, but that's the magic of what he does. I mean, I was reading an interview online that Alex Van Halen recently gave, and he was talking about the differences between Dave and Sammy. He was like, Dave is really much more of a poet. He writes these kind of off-the-wall lyrics, but for what Dave does, it's kind of beautiful. And Sammy, in a way, is a much better, I don't want to say better, but a much more different type of songwriter. I mean, Dave can just kind of throw a crazy lyric out, doesn't really necessarily have to really mean anything, but if it sounds cool, he finds a song to write, finds a way to write a song around that. Whereas with Sammy, he's like a lot of great artists, where a lot of his, he's really a great lyric writer, and he really he could sit down and write write a great sounding tune, in just a couple of minutes, I think. I mean, or based on like life experiences, things he's actually gone through in his life, and that's what makes those Van Halen era songs just so special, because you could tell that those are songs that he wrote from the heart.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And just going down this list here, like of the songs to start with. Good Enough, again, that's just a real fun kind of good time feeling song. Why Can't This Be Love? That's probably one of my favorite songs on the entire album. I mean, it was the first kind of sound we got of a new Van Halen. I mean, that was the first thing they released as a single, and it really shocked a lot of fans, because when you think of Van Halen, even though 1984 was loaded with keyboards, and that's the first time Eddie really kind of put a lot of keyboards on the album. I mean, I think a lot of people thought this was going to be more of a guitar-driven album, and it was probably 50-50 guitar and keyboards, oriented album, and it didn't really seem to matter. I mean, Why Can't This Be Love? When I heard that on the radio for the first time, different kind of sound, but you know what? It worked for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then Get Up, probably that's one of my all-time favorite tunes off this too, because it's probably as close as you're going to get to a metal track on this album, 5150. But I mean, when I hear that tune, I hear that high-pitched scream, I know it's Sammy,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Great songwriter. Yeah, I love this formation of the band personally.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand there's a strong divide. People. It seems like there's a lot of people out there that they're either David Lee Roth fan or a Sammy Hagar fan.
Yeah.
I'm one of the strange that I appreciated them, and I liked them both. I really did.
I'm with you, Joe.
And they were.
I'm with you, Joe, and I'll tell you. Like I said, I started off like not wanting to like this album or this lineup of a band, but once I heard the album, there's just no denying that this is just from top to bottom. It's a great album. The songs are great, and see that matters, because if you're checking out you're checking out a Van Halen album just because Eddie's a great guitar player. I mean, there's a lot more that goes into a Van Halen album. You really got to have songs, and they've always delivered on. No matter who was in the band, they always had great songs.
Yeah, for our listeners out there, if you haven't listened to this album in a long time, put it on, crank it up, go outside, fire up your barbecue, do your workout, do whatever you're going to do, and just go about your day and listen to this album from start to finish. And by the time it's done, I promise you, whatever you're going through, you will feel better. This album will make you feel good.
There's really, and the other thing, Joe, I mean, let's go back 35 years ago when this album it was first coming out and first released. I mean, the discussion among Van Halen fans at the time were, are you a Roth fan? Are you a Hagar fan? Are you going to hate this? Or are you going to love it? Or what? Now we're talking 35 years later in 2021, and we have to have a sad discussion that, just last October, our guitar god, Eddie Van Halen, finally lost his battle with cancer and passed away, And so, as Van Halen fans, we're now kind of wishing, Ed was still here. We're kind of wishing that we could have one more Van Halen tour. But you know what? We're left with this great, beautiful catalog of music. And you go back 35 years, and you're thinking about, man, that was 35 years ago. Eddie was still here. This album was coming out. It was a great rock and roll celebration. It was, and I love the fact that they were able to kind of shut up all the critics and kind of prove it. Prove me and everybody else wrong who thought they could not carry on without David Lee Roth. I just love the fact that they were able to remain successful all these years.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's the way. I got to tell people, like, when I first approached Joe about doing this episode, he was kind of like, well, I don't know if we can spend a whole hour talking about it. I love that album, and that is the album that kind of introduced me to Van Halen. But I said, Joe, I think once we get talking, you're going to see, because we're doing This Is Metal with Joe Lawson, and this is Joe Lawson's story. But it's not just Joe Lawson's story, because this was the album that a lot of people got turned on to Van Halen. I mean, see, they were Van Halen fans for years, but a lot of people, like you, Joe, they knew nothing about that era of Van Halen until they got into this album. So 5150 is a really important album, and like I said, when you consider the fact there was not a single music video released from this album, and it still went number one. And the interesting thing is, all the studio albums with Sammy hit number one. So there is something to be said for Sammy Hagar being in Van Halen.
Oh yeah, like I said, they sharpened their game as songwriters. Whether you like it or not, you have to admit it.
Oh yeah.
And it made the band more versatile, having a guy that could write, sing, and play
guitar. Yeah, and see, Sammy, no matter what people think, he really is not an egomaniac in the fact that he didn't come into the band thinking, me and Ed, we're gonna have these guitar duos on stage. We're gonna be like KK Downing and Glenn Tipton. He's not like, no. This is Eddie's band. He's a guitar god. I'm the front man. I'm the lead singer. I play guitar too, but I can't do what Ed does. So we're gonna let him shine over here on the guitar. I'm just gonna play the rhythm parts.
Yeah. I don't know. I've seen some of the documentaries and things like that, and I know there were problems, and that ultimately led to Sammy leaving and the band splitting up and various things like that. But before that, I mean, when you listen to this, you can't help but think, at least at first, they must have got along really good.
Yeah.
Because you could hear it in the music. I mean, it was a magical time, and it sounded really good.
Yeah.
And I think it was very natural. I think the songwriting probably went really well for them.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's interesting because Sammy, like you said, he brought another dimension to the band, something that wasn't there before, and that's like in any band, Joe. When a new guy comes in, no matter how hard he may try to kind of sound like the previous guy he's replacing, always going to bring something, some different characteristic into the band, and that's what they were able to do successfully. I mean, very few bands have been able to do this. I mean, maybe AC/DC. That's probably one of the very few ones that come to mind. But Van Halen, but a lot of bands, they try to replace the singer, and it's just never the same. But
ironically, Van Halen is a good example of both.
Yeah.
Because they did a fantastic job, or a successfully fantastic job.
Yeah.
You can't argue that, with number one hits left and right.
Yeah.
And number one albums with Sammy. Okay, and then fast forward to their career when they got Gary Cherone. Great singer. I mean, I'm not going to say anything bad about the guy, because I think he's very talented. But he just wasn't a right fit. It was just like a forced puzzle piece that didn't fit quite right in the puzzle. Yeah. And the songs were disconnected, and it wasn't Van Halen. And I think that fans really didn't feel the connection there like they did with Sammy. Even though there was a split. Between the Van Halen fans that loved Sammy and the Van Halen fans that wanted David Lee Roth, there still was so many that loved what Van Halen was doing with Sammy, and that was not the case with Gary Cherone. Yeah. And all the way to the point to where there was a live show, and I guess David Lee Roth was having some serious problems live, and struggling through the sets, and people were booing. And Eddie Van Halen stepped up to the mic and told everybody to shut up, or he's going to get Gary Cherone back.
Wow! Wow!
I mean, what a slap in the face for Gary.
What a turncoat! But yeah, I mean, it's kind of really funny, because that Van Halen 3 album, Gary Cherone, it's a pretty decent album. But I will agree that I don't know that it should have been a Van Halen album. I mean, my probably favorite tune on that whole entire album, there's a song they did a video for called Without You. It's a great little kind of catchy pop tune, and I kind of think if they would have had more tunes like that on the album, maybe it would have been a more focused album. And see, Gary Cherone, he's a very great singer, and he's a great pop singer, so I think they weren't as focused on that album. But I think if they'd had more songs kind of in that vein, it would have been accepted more by the fans. What's interesting is I think that album, believe it or not, hit number one like for the first week or two that it was out, but then it quickly fell off the charts.
Yeah, I'm shocked to hear that it ever hit number
I don't know if it hit number. It might have been the
It
single that hit
didn't
number.
resonate with me.
It might have been the.
And no disrespect
Yeah,
to Gary, but
yeah.
like I said, to me, it just didn't fit at all. And I think most Van Halen fans probably felt the same way.
Yeah.
I mean, because the album came out and it said Van Halen on it,
Yeah.
there's probably a shitload of people that went out and bought it.
Yeah, not knowing.
Let's face the facts there. But, I just heard a lot of backlash, a lot of bad things, and that's not all Gary's fault.
Yeah.
Like you said, Gary's a fantastic, talented singer in his own right, and I love what he did with Extreme. I mean, he was awesome in Extreme, and but I just don't think it was the right fit for Van Halen, and the songs that Van Halen were writing. They were just missing the mark. I mean, they weren't terrible. They weren't bad. But, I mean, it didn't have the magic that they had with some of the David Lee Roth stuff and some of the Sammy stuff. The magic wasn't there. And I think that those are some huge shoes that Gary had to fill.
Oh, yeah.
That maybe he wasn't the right guy, combined with, like I said, the songs just weren't as magical and as good.
Yeah. Well, I you may be right, Joe. Now that I think about it, I think the song I was talking about, Without You, that may have hit, it may have been a number one single, but it quickly fell off the chart. I think you were right about that. Now, I can tell you what I know about Gary Cherone, kind of hooking up with the guys in Van Halen. It was because Alex Van Halen's brother-in-law at the time, who was also serving as the band's manager, his name was Ray Daniels. He's the guy that had for years managed Rush, and that's part of the friction that grew between Sammy and the brothers, was because he did not like this guy Ray Daniels. He felt like Ray Daniels was always kind of causing trouble, and surprise, Ray Daniels also managed Extreme at the time, and I heard that it was Ray that kind of told the brothers, "Hey, why didn't you have Extreme just broke up. Why don't you have Gary Cherone come down and audition?" And it was through their manager at the time that kind of hooked Gary up with them.
Oh.
Yeah. So.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So the other I didn't finish going down. So we got Dreams. Now that was like one of the first kind of real pop ballads Van Halen ever did. Dreams, and they did. And that was all over radio, I remember. But I tell you, the ballad I really loved off this album, a little better than that, was Love Walks In.
Yeah, fantastic song, man.
Yeah, and another...
catchy, memorable. Yep.
Probably my number 3 favorite song off this album would have to be Best of Both Worlds.
Yep, that's a good one, too.
Yeah, and so, this is one of those albums, like I said, it started Sammy's career with Van Halen, and I'd say this is probably just as important of an album, in the career of Sammy Hagar as maybe that first Montrose album. You go back to Montrose, and that's an interesting album because, again, Sammy only made 2 albums with Montrose, but anytime people bring up the name Sammy Hagar, they always point to that 1973 album, and it's just got so many classic rock tunes on there, like Bad Motor Scooter, Rock Candy, Good Rockin' Tonight. I mean, that's an album you can also, very much like Van Halen 1, just listen from top to bottom, and you can't go wrong with any of the tunes on there. And it's kind of interesting that they would get Sammy Hagar all these years later to join the band, because I know Eddie in particular was really influenced by Montrose early on.
Right.
Yeah, and so, and then you're saying, this is just from top to bottom, it's a great sounding, good time music album, just good party tunes. And then the next album they, of course, did was OU 812. They continued that kind of little trend of, let's find funny numbers to name our albums after. Now, the interesting thing is, because like 50 was a number 1 album, this album eventually, OU 812 eventually went to number 1 too, but then they started releasing music videos on this album, and so it was on the OU 812 album, and so every album they did with Sammy from that point on, they would release music videos, and then on the final album they released with Sammy, which was this album called Balance, it was kind of a combination, and that's when the friction between Sammy and the rest of the band was really kind of at a high point. And if you listen to any of those albums, there's like any of the songs on the album, it's a combination like a great pop tunes, like they got this song called "Can't Stop Loving You." It's a great little pop tune. I always love that song. And then there's a song from the Twister soundtrack called "Human Beings." A real kind of heavy track, and if you watch the video and you listen to the kind of the lyrics, you can kind of hear the friction and the hate that was between the guys at the time. But just an overall great tune. So that's an album that was a little darker, and yet it still went number one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I just think again, Joe, we were looking back 35 years later, and it deserves to be looked at, and then you got to also bring up the fact that the album cover in itself was kind of interesting. It's kind of a green cover, and you got this guy who's kind of holding up this Van Halen logo. It looks like the kind of a world globe or something, and this guy's lifting it up. I'm like, what is that? but it doesn't really matter because you put it on, and the music it's going to rock your world.
Absolutely. Fantastic record.
Yeah.
Good times, good music, good memorable melodies and hooks, good songwriting,
Yeah.
And that's what stands the test of time. That's why even to this day, bands like the Beatles still resonate with people, and there's still people talking about them and listening to their music and running around playing tribute bands to them and all of those things. Because they stood the test of time. Why? Yeah. Because they had songs that resonated with people. They knew how to write songs. Bottom line. And
that's why it's interesting. Van Halen also got into I forget what year it was now, but they're also in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with both Sammy and Dave. And so again, Sammy Hagar didn't just come in as a replacement member. I mean, he made such a dent with the band that even the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, he doesn't always consider so-called replacement members or new members. Sammy even got into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and through Van Halen, of course, he'd become great. His best buddy is Michael Anthony, and they've got this cool new project called The Circle. It features Sammy and Sammy Hagar, Michael Anthony, Jason Bonham on drums, and Vic Johnson, who's Sammy's guitar player. And they put out just this year. It's called Lockdown Sessions. Some great cover tunes and some new original tunes that the guys put together during the lockdown. They do a great cover of The Who's Won't Get Fooled Again. They do a great cover of a couple of Van Halen tunes, one of which is, I think, Good Enough off of this album. And they do a great cover of Right Now, and kind of really heavy it up. But if you're in any of that, I really suggest people check that out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I got to say, as a Van Halen fan too, while we're probably never going to get obviously another Van Halen tour, how could you with Eddie being gone and everything? If you're at all a fan of the Sammy era, when Sammy's able to go out there and tour again, he always throws in some Van Halen tunes in the set from his time in the band. So that's one way these tunes are going to live on.
Absolutely, and that statement resonates true for a lot of people with Dio, with all the people who have passed on. I get from a fan perspective, I get it. People want to see those bands continue touring and putting out albums and carrying on. But, those iconic bands, like Van Halen, I mean, with Eddie passing away, show those guys some respect. Let their legacy be what it is and appreciate the music that they gave us, and don't put some hokey version of Van Halen together just to go out and make money on. That's disgusting and sickening. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that immediately following Eddie's death, all these rumors started that Wolfgang's gonna replace his dad. He's a new lead guitar player, and even when I'm first reading this stuff, I'm thinking, no, there's no way that's gonna happen. And as much as I like for Van Halen to be able to carry on, there's just no way you could do it without Eddie. I mean, and if you even attempted, it would look real cheesy. I mean, I've heard that they're talking about eventually there's going to be a tribute show to Eddie, but maybe we're going to wait a little, maybe at least a year after his passing, because again, to do something right now would look really cheesy, like you're trying to cash in on the guy's death. And I got to say, for all the guys involved, they all seem to kind of be in that little bit of an agreement as far as, if you're going to do any kind of tribute, you got to do it in the right way. I mean, they all seem to agree at least that
there really is no Van Halen without Eddie. I mean,
if he wanted to do something tasteful, like write and record a bunch of stuff, in memory of him and put it out, or something like that, I could go with that.
Or even
I would say that would be appropriate, but don't call it Van Halen. Don't try and cash in on it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, have it be a tribute to Eddie or something. That would be awesome.
I mean, I've heard there's been talk that there's a lot of unreleased tracks, throughout the years that Eddie does play on that have never seen the light of day. That they're considering about doing something with down the line. What that is, they're not really making that clear yet. But that's a cool thought, because it's stuff we've never heard before, and but thought of oh great, Eddie left this stuff behind, and from a fan perspective, it'd be cool to hear that,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And it's kind of sad with Eddie's passing that he's not going to get to see his son have that kind of success, with his solo album. But I understand it's coming out in June. But he was there, I guess, for most of when he was making the album. And I think it's cool that Wolfgang Van Halen is going to be able to have kind of his own career. I mean, it was great for him to play with Eddie and Van Halen, but
sure.
But I think this will give people really a chance to see what Wolfgang can do, because I mean, I can't wait to hear the album from. I mean, he's super talented. I mean, just from hearing the fact, it's going to be a real solo album in the sense that I think not only does he sing lead on all the tracks, but I think he plays guitar, bass, and drums. I think he does it all. So that's going to really put this guy up in the spotlight. I mean, he toured the world with Van Halen and his father, I think when he was 15 or 16 years old. And he's 30-something years old now, so he's come quite a long ways, in that time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure growing up in that household, music was part of his life every day.
Oh, of course.
And he was nurtured in that way and supported and encouraged, by Eddie and his Uncle Alex and the family, and that turned him into an amazing musician at probably at a very early age,
Yeah. I'm not sure, Joe, if you're aware of this song I'm going to start telling you about right now, but on For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, that's the album that has Right Now on it. That's the third album they did with Sammy. There's an instrumental track on there called 316, and that was a piece of music that apparently he wrote when he found out Valerie Bertinelli was pregnant with Wolfie. And he would play it. Apparently, the story goes that he played the track like while Whoopi was still in the womb, and I guess they named it 316 because I think that's Whoopi's birthday.
Oh, cool!
So a little bit of trivia there. That's kind of a cool thing. And Alex Van Halen, like we were saying before, I mean, I would be surprised if he ever stepped on foot, with another guitar player. Could you imagine not just losing your kid brother, but pretty much your best friend in life? Yeah,
that would be tough, man. And I feel for him, going through all of that. The whole family.
Yeah, and tell me, Joe.
Like I said, when it comes to things like that, this is just me and maybe the way I am.
Yeah.
But when it comes to someone passing away, give their family some respect, give them some space.
Yeah.
And instead of being up their ass and in their face and trying to find out every detail of the funeral and the future plans and all this and all of that, it's kind of gross and disgusting to me.
I'm with you.
Because I also realized that those people, although they were famous and although they were incredibly talented,
they got private lives, right? Yeah.
Fucking A, man. They're still people.
Yeah.
They're people with families, husbands, wives, kids, grandkids. They have families, and I don't think that's respected enough.
I mean, even
people need to, it's okay that you love that person or that band, and that's fantastic, and you want to find out about them, but do it with some class and some dignity.
I mean, even the way I've seen some of these people online were attacking poor Woofy. I mean, like, wow, this kid's father just died. Show him some respect,
People are shit,
Yeah, and I will say this, Joe. Also, like I said, I was also a major David Lee Roth fan, and so also in 1986, it was like the competition between the two camps was really high because besides 5150, you also had David Lee Roth releasing his first full-length solo album, Eat 'Em and Smile. And Dave was a real visual guy, so he really he did make music videos at the time, and it was like these two albums were competing against one another, and Dave sold quite a huge amount of copies of his debut solo album, Eat 'Em and Smile, but this one went number one. I don't think Dave's album hit number one, but they were like competing, and both camps, they're kind of bad-mouthing one another. But I'm happy to say that when Eddie finally did, pass away, that Van Halen in many ways got to finally end as it should. Dave came back to the band, and got to, him and Ed and Alex got to make peace with one another. They ended, I guess, even though there was always kind of some friction, they had a mutual respect, it seemed, at the time for one another. They didn't always like everything David Lee Roth said and did, but they appreciated each other, I think, more later in life, for what they all brought to the band, and I was glad to see that they kind of had that respect back for one another, by the time things came to an end.
Yeah, I agree. That's good with the same kind of thing for something.
Yeah. Can you speak up, Joe? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Okay, I couldn't hear you for a minute. So yeah, so yeah, I'm glad to see they ended on that high note, and then also the fact that for years Sammy and Eddie had gone without talking, and I guess Sammy, like a lot of people, was starting to hear that Eddie was really, really sick, and I guess they had a mutual friend in George Lopez, the comedian, and George kind of told Sammy, hey, if you want to try to make up with Ed, now's the time to kind of reach out to him. And it was George Lopez that kind of connected the two, and Sammy finally just called Eddie one day and said, hey, how you doing, Ed? And he's like, hey, what took you so long to call me? He's like, really? And I guess Sammy for years was just afraid to approach, Eddie, because he'd been battling with his alcohol addiction for years and years, but luckily too, he finally beat that, and I guess the two were able to come together and end on friendly terms, which that's always got to be a cool thing to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so Joe, before I think that's pretty much covers 5150 and Van Halen back in 1986. Taking a look on the 35th anniversary of his master class album. And before we end the show, I wanted to let people know a few things. Just over the last couple of days, we launched also a This Is Metal Facebook group, and we've been posting the stuff that's currently up on the site, and we've been posting a lot of the past episodes, and we really urge people to join the group if they want, and feel free to stop by and let us know what you think of everything we've done. If you have ideas for future shows, if anybody has a question for Joe, feel free to post up there. I'm sure Joe would be happy to answer it either in the group or when we do a future episode. So we're always kind of changing what we're doing up, but also questions for Jason. Oh yeah. Well, feel free. Yeah.
Don't sell yourself short. You're quite the celebrity, my friend.
Well, I don't know about that, but thank you, Joe. I definitely will say that I have a lot of fun doing this show with Joe, and
likewise.
And recently, since just today, I posted an interview on the that Joe and I did. I think it goes back to June of 2020 last year, and I got a backlog of so much stuff that just has yet to be posted. But I held off on on posting that interview. It was about the Wasp album Headless Children, and that was an interview took place before we ever launched This Is Metal, but it was that interview that kind of gave me the idea for This Is Metal. I thought, talking to Joe, this guy really knows his metal. He knows what he's talking about, and he's a musician in his own right. And so that kind of gave us the idea to do This Is Metal, and it's been really a lot of fun. And one guy that we've enjoyed kind of featuring over the course of This Is Metal and my own time on Chaotic Riffs, where you can also find This Is Metal, is Sean Peck. It was Sean's birthday this weekend, and so we kind of decided on the new group. We're going to have this as Sean Peck Day, and we posted a lot of those past interviews I've done with Sean, and he's a guy I love because he's super talented guy like Joe. I mean, Sean Peck, he's got three great groups: Death Dealer, Cage, the Three Tremors. Always a very busy guy, super talented. So we always love to.
Don't forget to leave out Dennis Sherman. That was a fantastic record that he did with them guys.
Yeah, and I'm glad you threw that in there, Joe, because in fact, when we end the recording this tonight, I have an old interview I did with Sean a couple years back about that band, and it's a pretty good interview. I think you'll have fun listening back to that, so I'm going to post that later. And
Cool.
and then also, Joe, I want to let the folks know that you have a new Scream Kings album coming out, and give you a chance to tell the fans anything you want about that before we wrap it up tonight.
Yeah, Jason and I are going to be recording an episode with the band real soon, and we'll be putting that out. It'll tell all about the songs, the tracks, recording, this and that. We're hoping for a May release date, The Indomitable Spirit, it's called, and we'll be releasing a single with a video right away with it called Reign of Hellfire that we're finishing right now.
Yeah, and, Joe, while we're talking, I got a question to ask you regarding the new album and that real quick. I see some stuff you've been posting on your site. You guys have any plans to do like kind of like a photo shoot or anything to have some new photos?
Yeah, we're going to end up doing that soon too. Right now, it's just time consuming trying to do these videos and get all that stuff finished. And we do a lot of this stuff ourselves. We record everything, we mix everything, we master everything, and we're even doing some of the video stuff now ourselves.
Yeah.
So we take on we wear a lot of hats. So the good thing about that is it gives us total and complete creative freedom.
Yeah.
And the schedule is whatever we want it to be, so it's more convenient.
That's great.
But on the downside of things, it's more difficult and it's more time consuming.
Yeah.
But it's finally coming around, and we're finally going to be releasing some stuff real soon.
Joe, to end on a kind of a cool, happy note, since I posted the new Vistas Metal group over the weekend, I posted an old video you had done. I think it was a Scream Kings, like a live performance, and I'd made some comment about the performance, how great it was, and you said something about that. You performed at this club, and it's no longer there. It's under new management. I was asking, hey, what's that like to know where a place that you've stepped on the stage is no longer there? And you were sharing, kind of help me with this. You're sharing an experience where you had a female fan kind of react to one of your performances, and she knocked you down or something.
Yeah, this was actually my first bar experience. I was just turned 18.
Yeah.
So I was in a small biker bar in the middle of Ohio, and it was a cover band. We played covers, and I was in the middle of playing a set, and a gal had walked up to the stage and kind of motioned to me with her finger to come over to her. And I was kind of shy, I was just at first kind of ignored her. And my bass player, he kind of nudged me and he whispered in my ear. He said, "Hey, go over there, man. See what she wants. How about she's going to request a song or something? Go over there." So I walk over there by her and I lean down to see what she wanted, so I could kind of half-ass hear her. And she grabbed me by the crotch and pulled me down off of the stage.
Wow.
And the whole bar erupted in laughter. They just thought it was fantastic,
Yeah, and now I imagine, you're on stage and this crazy biker chick grabbing you down there. That must have been quite the shock.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting it. That's for sure.
Oh wow, so you're just saying there too, Joe, that that's when you were doing covers. I mean, what were some of your favorite songs to cover back in the day?
Oh man, you know what? There's so many of them. 2 Minutes to Midnight by Iron Maiden. That was a fun one.
Wow.
And Wild Side. All the Crew stuff. Monkey Business. Get the Fuck Out by Skid Row.
Wow.
Yeah. Did some AC/DC. Just a wide variety of things. Even Alice in Chains and Stone Temple Pilots. I even did some of them songs. It was a really diverse band that did a lot of material. We had 4 hours worth of stuff we had to do.
Well, Mr. Lawson, it's once again it's a little under an hour, and we've done another great episode. So I thank you again for doing this, and we'll be talking again real soon. I'm going to try to get this up in the next couple days, and for all you metal heads out there, you've been listening to This Is Metal with Joe Lawson. Anything you want to say to all the fans out there before we wrap it up tonight, Joe?
Yeah, I gotta work with you on some vocal exercises, man. We gotta do a better job. Try it again.
This is metal. Let's see if Joe can do it louder.
There you go. That's better. This is metal.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Lawson, and I'll be talking to you again real soon. You have a good night.
You too, brother. Okay. Bye-bye.